Good afternoon. I'm Sharon Sobol Jordan, President and CEO of the United Way of Greater Cleveland. Welcome to our first community conversation of 2025. These conversations are a forum to raise awareness and increase engagement on important topics in our community. Each of our voices matters and has the power to create change. Thank you to Ideastream Public Media for moderating today's session and to WOVU for simulcasting the discussion live on 95.9 FM. And thank you to our community partners for their support. Today's topic is Benefits Cliffs 101, the hidden cost of a pay raise. Far too many working families face the benefits cliff dilemma in Ohio. These benefits cliffs can keep workers trapped at their current wages and on public support, keep businesses from filling open positions and retaining workers, and keep taxpayers funding a public benefit system that is not effective at helping their family members, neighbors, and coworkers achieve economic stability. Today's panel will discuss the impact of the benefits cliffs on families, employers, and communities, opportunities to reform public benefit policies to address the cliff effect, and ways more people on the economic mobility journey can be successful. We are privileged to have Josh Boose as our moderator. Josh is an associate producer for newscasts with Ideastream Public Media. He began his career as an intern on the Morning Exchange program in Cleveland before spending the better part of a decade as a news reporter in Arkansas, Indiana, and New York. Josh returned to Cleveland in 2011, first as a reporter and anchor for Good Morning Cleveland, and then with radio station WTAM. He joined Ideastream in 2023. And with that, I'll turn it over to Josh to begin today's conversation.
Sharon, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you, United Way of Greater Cleveland, for hosting these community conversations and inviting me to moderate this important discussion today. Today's conversation will begin with a discussion by our panelists and include questions that I have prepared. A public question and answer segment will follow. That's going to be in about 40 minutes at 12:40, where panelists will answer questions from the community. You can also start asking questions at any time, actually, and we will make every attempt to get all of those questions answered. You can do that by texting those questions to 216-307-5632, or you can type them into the Q&A box if you are joining us on Zoom. At this time, I'd like to introduce our panel of experts today. Today, we are joined by John Rees, a senior policy advisor on the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta's Community and Economic Development team. In that role, John is engaged in research and partnerships to identify barriers to economic mobility and mitigation strategies that can improve economic security for families and meet the talent needs of businesses for a healthy economy. Mindy Kowalski is an Assistant Director of Health and Human Services with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. Mindy has held several leadership roles since joining the organization in 2014, including Policy and Operations Chief, and also Assistant Deputy Director in the Office of Family Assistance. Jack Schron Jr., President and CEO of Jergens Inc., a former Cuyahoga County councilman and a longtime leader in the worlds of education, workforce development, and community service. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for lending your expertise and your perspective to our conversation today. We certainly appreciate your time. Mindy, if I may start with you. So just so we're all on the same page here from the very beginning, what are benefit cliffs? Take us through that.
Yeah, so the easiest way to explain a benefits cliff is, generally speaking, I'll use myself as an example. I am on benefits, meaning that I am receiving SNAP or food stamps in OWF and Medicaid and maybe even childcare. And I'm a mom with 2 young kids. I am working, and they proposed to me that I get a promotion and I would make 25 cents more an hour with my promotion. At that point in time, if I took my promotion, I would lose all of my benefits due to putting me over income for them. So as a mom of 2 kids, I would have to make a financial decision on whether or not it is more economical for me to turn down my promotion and my raise and stay on benefits for my family, or take the promotion and raise and lose the benefits that I'm currently receiving.
Yeah, it has to be so frustrating for workers. I mean, who doesn't want to get ahead? Everybody. But if you get ahead too far, then obviously consequences, the lack of benefits. How widespread, Mindy, of a problem is this in Ohio? Do we know?
So that's a great question. And I don't know that I have an exact number for you. What we do know is that we have heard from multiple employers, and Jack can probably talk to this more, and John probably can talk to the numbers a little bit more, is that we've heard from multiple employers that people are not taking raises and not taking promotions or not taking additional hours because it will put them over the limit, and they will lose their benefits. We recently in Ohio increased our federal poverty level for benefits to 200%. What that does is that allows the cliff to be mitigated a little bit because it's a decrease in benefits as you make more money, as opposed to at 130%, which it was previously, you would lose your benefits immediately upon a raise.
Right, right. John, the Atlanta Fed, where you work, developed a tool called the Atlanta Fed Cliff Tool. Tell me a little bit about that and how that works to help people.
Well, to Minnie's point, we were sort of one of our mandates is to promote maximum employment. And we see this issue as a fairly widespread one affecting workers in specific industries, right? Depending on what industry, we've done a survey, for example, in the state of Alabama, where it was about 37% of workers indicated that they had experienced a cliff. Similarly, we did a survey of employers in Florida to ask them if their workers had experienced a cliff. And in that survey, it was about 1 in 3. And so one of the reasons we got into this was that it was widespread. Secondly, it aligns pretty well with, I think, our sort of core competencies of being able to do sort of broad-based analytics. And one of the reasons I think when people learn about this issue, I think one of the first questions people have, why does this exist, right? It seems rather odd that we would create disincentives for people to take on sort of a new role, pursue sort of mobility in their professional life. And it's often the result of the fact that in this country, right, we have a sort of a myriad of different sort of public assistance programs with different rules, and they really vary dramatically based on sort of household size, where you live, and what specific programs that you are participating in. And so we thought this was a good opportunity to sort of take our knowledge and apply it and sort of see how each of those sort of programs integrates with one another and impacts people as they go up an income level, right? Whether they get a promotion or they take on additional hours, right? And so we have created 3 primary tools, ones we call our snapshot, our dashboard, and planner, that help workers understand when they might experience the cliff. And these tools are really positioned from sort of a survive to thrive continuum, right? That if someone is just interested in, all right, if I go from making, $15 an hour to $15.50, how might that immediately impact my benefits? We have a tool for that person. For another person thinking about, all right, I'm thinking about changing careers. What's the long-term trajectory of that career path? How might that impact my public benefits over the long term? To give people, I think, a more accurate understanding of when they might experience a cliff and how we might be able to mitigate that, whether that's on the employer side or sort of there's public policies that can do so. Because again, historically, it's been very difficult to understand when you might hit that cliff. And I alluded to earlier, right, that in one survey, we had 37% of workers said that they had experienced or were afraid they would experience it. Some of those people might be wrong, right? That it's such a complex calculation that we've created a system where people might say no, even though they would actually be better off. Again, just because of the sheer complexity of the system that we currently have.
And I think, that's a great tool. The question then becomes, how do we get people to that tool? I mean,
Yep.
That's going to be the big thing. Jack, as an employer, obviously you're aware of the benefit cliff. Do you think most other employers are? What's your take on this?
Well, because you lumped me into most other employers, that's a pretty big group. So I'll focus on on what I know, and then I'll focus on the groups to which I've had some association with. I've been originally part of county government, and we created what's called a sector partnership. And within the sector partnership, we identified different groups, manufacturing group, of which my own business is part of, the hospitality group, the medical service providers out there, and then the tech group. And so I think my answer was going to be different between each one of those groups, only because manufacturing at this point in time is such a strong demand for manufacturing. And you aren't going to hire people that are going to be below the poverty level because the demand is so strong. So when we were sitting in our sector partnership, we meet on a regular basis. They were just shocked that I was even talking about this concept. But because I have this other life, or had this other life, I was able to bring it up in these conversations, because one of the groups that we were starting to bring into the manufacturing were second chance individuals from formerly incarcerated situations, and the salary that they were starting them at was going to open up this potential cliff aspect. And they had no idea that that was something that was going to fit into the dialogue. So what was done? Immediately they bumped the salary up so that it did not factor into that. Now let's go to some of the other groups. The hospitality, there's just no way around it that the entry level and a lot of the support people working in the restaurants and the hotels are going to get captured into that benefits cliff, where any salary increase could cause them to lose their actual benefits. And it was some of this, I think, is shocking to most employers. They're used to the concept of grow and reward, and grow and reward, only to find out that when you start having this conversation, that it comes back and it causes them a problem. And the same thing with a lot of the entry level individuals going into the medical, because there's a lot of support people. It's not just all doctors and nurses that make a hospital run. You need people to make the food, to prepare the food. You need people to take care of the bedpans. You need people just do all the other functions that are sometimes invisible to the patient. You don't get that in there, and they too are getting captured, as we found out in the sector partnership, by the benefits cliff. And we as business people thought, oh, this is an easy fix. Let's make it logical. Let's make it transitional, as opposed to benefits cliffs. But of course, that's the business person talking. It's not the politician or somebody who's writing the rules on that side of the aisle.
I do have a follow-up, Jack. I just want to mention, again, you can text your questions, everyone, to 216-307-5632. Or if you are watching on Zoom right now, you can type them into the Q&A box if you are joining us in that capacity. So what do you hear from employees, Jack, when you at the very start of the process? I mean, do you take this into consideration when you're hiring people?
In our business, we've had a couple instances where we've been hiring interns that have come to us, and maybe they're not, interns. There's a misconception that interns are 16, 17, 18-year-old entering the workforce. Now, some of them are coming. The average age for a student over at Tri-C is, I think, 26 years old, and that's always a shock out there. And so the internships there are ones that we really do bump into the benefits cliff. And so that we need to make sure that we actually go out of our way to make sure we don't cause any harm to the individuals, at least in manufacturing. I can't speak to the hospitality. We just know that we were aware and we saw it, and we occurred. We're not in the leadership running the hotel. We're not in the leadership running the restaurant in downtown Cleveland. We just knew that was being experienced out there.
Mindy, tell me a little bit about this pilot program that the state of Ohio is doing to really tackle this.
Yeah, so prior to the pandemic, my team was tasked with the small take of how do you prevent the benefit cliff? And we were like, whoa, that's not a small ask. So we sat in the room and we came up with a bunch of ideas, and we took them to our leadership, and they were like, nope, none of these are going to work. So at the time, the director said, we want you to do a human-centered design approach to this project. For those of you who are not aware, human-centered design kind of takes what I normally do at the state level, which is create policies and push them down to the counties, into the local areas, and they do what we say. So this flips it on its head. So it said, go talk to the people who you're impacting and find out what they really need. So we went and we talked to a bunch of individuals who either were able to bridge the gap between the benefit cliff and long-term sustainability, those who were on the verge of the cliff, as well as those who were not even close. When we did it and we went into it, I'll be honest, my first thought is these individuals are going to come back and say, I need more money. I need you to give me more funding in order for me to bridge the gap between self-sufficiency and the cliff. Actually, when they came back, that is not what they said at all. They said that they needed more support. They said, and my favorite example of this is, they said, I don't have that person in my life that I can call when something goes wrong. So the best example I always use is my mom. When I was 26 years old, I live in Columbus, my mom lives in Cleveland. I would get a flat tire on the side of the road on 71 south of Mansfield, and the first person I would call is my mom. My mom can't do anything for me, right? She's in Cleveland, I'm in Columbus, but just to call her and for her to help me and walk me through it was beneficial. They don't have that person. The other thing they said is mental health. They said, I can't be successful until I deal with my mental health issues. One woman in particular said, I had daddy issues. And until I addressed my daddy issues, I was never going to be long-term self-sufficient. They also said that they felt invisible and shamed when they went into their local JFS office to request benefits. They said, I don't want to be there. I'm embarrassed that I have to be here, and I'm just treated like another number. So we took all of this information and we created a program. It's called the Benefit Bridge Program. It is currently in 13 counties in the state, with the hopes that we will expand it. The core concepts of the Benefit Bridge Program is, one, we created a care team. So individuals, everybody's care team could look different, but there are 3 elements of the care team that have to remain the same. You have to have a peer mentor. This is somebody with lived experience, somebody who is able to bridge that gap between the cliff and long-term sustainability as that person that they talked about, right? As that person that they could call and say, hey, my babysitter didn't show up. What am I supposed to do? The other thing that is required in the care team is a caseworker. So a local JFS caseworker has to be involved, and the individual has to have anybody else that they need. So if they have mental health issues, if they have child support issues, whatever those other entities are, need to be part of the care team. The second thing that we require in the Benefit Bridge program is that every participant takes financial literacy. So what we learned through our human-centered design too is that individuals who are on the verge of the cliff sometimes don't understand that throwing my 3-year-old a birthday party instead of paying my rent is the way they go. So really giving them the financial acumen to really make smart decisions with their money. And so knowing that it's okay not to have that birthday party, you pay your rent, birthday parties can come later, kind of thing. And also the other thing that we did is we took a carrot approach instead of a stickers approach, is what we say. So we incentivize them. So as they start to make progress in their plan, they are incentivized to do so. So they are provided with monetary incentives, sometimes not monetary incentives, but something to say, hey, you did it, great job, moving forward. And finally, one of the cornerstones of the program is we have something called the well-being score. So what the well-being score does is, I'm going to take you back to your college days, to Maslow's hierarchy of need, where Maslow said you can't be successful unless these core pieces are met. And so what this assessment does is it breaks down Maslow's hierarchy of need, and it gives the individual a number based on where they are. So what are your housing needs, right? So are you couch surfing? Do you have steady housing? Is your rent payment more than 25% of your annual take home? Those are the kind of things it takes into account. And at the very end, it gives us a score. Why this is so important is because it helps us to understand what that person's needs are. So if you have a really low score, the county caseworker can help address that score. It also allows us to see progress. So one of the hard things in government sometimes is that we can see progress, and we do it by monetary progress. And monetary progress is not always a good indicator of success, right? So I might have to take a step back. Let's maybe say I quit my job so that I can go to school. In a monetary world, that's going to look like I took a step back, right? But really, I'm gaining skills to get a long-term self-sufficiency. So the score allows us the ability to look at a person and see where they are, and then see the growth that they have. Currently, like I said, the Benefit Bridge program has been going on about 5 years, and we've seen great results from the program. Some of the things that we have seen is that when a person enters the program, their well-being score is probably around a 20. We see a 20-point increase in well-being score for those who positively exit the program. Also anticipate that in 5 years, we'll see a return on investment. So any money that the state puts into an individual, once they graduate from the program, we'll see in 5 years, we'll see that return on investment that we put into the individual. I'm trying to think if there's any other numbers that you guys would be interested right now. But those are the big things. We also are seeing that the people who exit tend not to come back on benefits. So like I said, the program's kind of in its infancy. So that number will increase as more people exit.
You know, it's so interesting, especially the financial literacy aspect of this. You know, that's something that so many times when you're talking to people, they say that should be a class in high school that every single person takes so that they can be better equipped when they go out into the real world after college. I have a question from someone here on Zoom, and any one of you can answer this. It may be best for you, Mindy. I began witnessing this in 2008, 2009, referring to the benefit cliff. When did this begin showing up on the radar in the state of Ohio?
That's a great question. So it was pre-pandemic is when it really came onto our radar. I think we always knew about it, but I think it really took hold, and it really started to impact our policies probably in about 2018, 17, 18.
Very good.
Josh, on that same point, right next door to our facility here at Jergens is the Cleveland Food Bank. And they recognized, if you want to see a model of what they've done, they have flipped the model from just being a food distribution center to they now have created a brand new facility right next door to us, where it is exactly what Mindy's talking about. It is a series of support groups all linked together. Ironically, in there is also a manufacturing employment center called Magnet is in there, but there's also a diaper service in there for people who have a problem with diapers and not being able to get access to them, can't fund it. There's also right in there is our top community hospital is in there. Metro General has their own branch of their hospital inside of the food bank. And so it's doing something completely different than just sitting there giving out the turkeys and things of that nature. They have flipped this model, including what you're talking about, Josh, of actually having counseling inside. I think there's about 13, 14 subgroups of nonprofits that have come together inside the food bank in the refurbished organization. I mean, the food bank was itself, the building itself was only I think 9 years old, 10 years old, when they said, okay, we're going to flip the model. We're going to build another food bank. And then this is going to be a community support center where they've got, I think, at least 10, 12 different subgroups in there. So if you hit the cliff, we can still get you diapers. If you hit the cliff, we can still get you employment services. If you hit the cliff, we can, this group is actually making it transitional for the candidates to be able to get support and not just be left in the lurch.
Yeah, and so to Jack's
please.
point, I'm sorry, to Jack's point, he's 100% right about the Cleveland Food Bank, and if you haven't seen it, it's awesome. One of the things that the food bank said, and one of the things we learned in the benefit clip or the benefit bridge as well, is that individuals have such a distrust of the system and such a distrust of individuals helping them that it takes a while to get that trust and for them to buy into the program. So the food bank right now, one of the things I think they're working on is getting more people to utilize those services, because that is one of our barriers. And that's why the benefit bridge, if you look at our numbers, when it started, it was low. It's now increasing because we're slowly gaining the trust of the citizens, which we didn't have before.
Well, the other 87 counties in the state, I know, have food banks. I know they have food distribution. If they were to just talk to Kristen up here, who runs it, she would be more than willing to share these ideas and these concepts so that you could actually mitigate some of the demand on government providing the own service. And it becomes, I mean, the food bank is a nonprofit where a lot of us send checks, and we said volunteers going from our office over there every single day.
And the United Way's 211 program also has staff present at the food bank community.
They do. They do. Good point. There was one of those 13 groups like on the signage that sits out there. Yes.
You offer, Jack, such a unique perspective because you've seen both sides of this, business and the community side with your work in government. With what Mindy said, it sounds just like it sounds so simple. They just need a little support when it comes down to the true basics. What's your take on that? When she said they just want someone to talk to, a lot of times that's the big missing point. What do you say to that? I
agree 100% because there are some days that I can't get in my office because the traffic is so busy now at the support center because people are coming there for getting help, which is good. And we just need to work with the food bank to actually orchestrate the traffic out there. But I really believe that a listening ear is so beneficial to these individuals out there.
We have some questions coming in. I really want to get though to John, if I could really quickly first, because last year, John, the state of Florida started working with the Fed to create a Florida Cliff dashboard. Well, take us through the need really in Florida and what this dashboard does.
Yeah, so sort of as Mindy alluded to, right, that often you've got individuals that are interested in pursuing sort of changing careers. They want to go or taking a sort of launch promotion. They may have to go back to training. So we've partnered with the state of Florida and their career source, so their WIOA sort of job training centers to introduce our tool. Again, very, I think, sort of supportive of what Jack and Mindy have said in the sense of we have developed a tool from a technology standpoint. There is no reason we couldn't just put this online and anybody who wanted to could access it. But we're a pretty firm believer that it needs to be introduced to people in a broader context with coaches and additional resources. And so we've been looking for various statewide and non-state actors, but in this case, we've partnered with the state of Florida's Career Source to provide individuals looking to make a career change with our dashboard product. And what all that does is sort of say, all right, let's say I'm interested in becoming an LPN. How long is it going to take to go to school? What is your anticipated wage once you get out of school and start working as an LPN? And how, depending on your household situation, how might that impact your public assistance level, not just now, not just maybe the year you get out, over the next 5 or 10 years, to help sort of guide people through that process, both from sort of a cautionary tale and as a source of encouragement, right? That you can sort of do this, and you might sort of uncover the fact that even once you transition, if you look at a certain career, it's not necessarily going to really position you to thrive. But if you select another career, it really is going to put you in a better place to really, be able to financially support yourself and your household moving forward. So that we did a pilot a couple years ago that was, highly, I think, praised by both counselors and individuals that completed. And so I want to say about a year and a half ago, that's been launched statewide. We have a similar arrangement in the state of Alabama. And I think, I think part of it hopefully is an endorsement of the tools that we've created. But I think broadly speaking, again, as Jack and Mindy have alluded to, I think it really just speaks to the fact that over the last 5 to 7 years, there's just been, I think, a growing level of awareness about this issue. It's become even more pronounced in an era where we have, it's a very dynamic economy in which you have, an official unemployment rate of 4 or 5% in a lot of communities, but that the line to the food bank is out the door. And so you have a lot of people who are employed, but they're still finding it difficult to sort of navigate making a living with the need for public assistance. And so there's just a lot of states doing different things and attacking it in a variety of ways. Some might be partnering with to use our tool. Others might be doing something like Mindy's sort of human-centered design about what other resources can we provide individuals besides monetary. And we have other states that are looking at doing monetary things, like sort of a refundable tax credit to help mitigate some of these cliff effects. And I think the hope is that we'll all sort of learn from each other, and that the things that work in Ohio, they may not work just straight copy them in Florida, but we can take elements of those and introduce those into various policies and sort of come up with solutions that work for individuals no matter where they live.
It sounds like, particularly in Florida, you're talking about the dashboard, it's more of a preventative approach. You're getting all the information that you need about a future career ahead of time, as opposed to so many times you hear people are in it and then, oh no, halfway through. So that's an interesting point to me.
Absolutely.
Mindy, please, you can respond, John.
Oh, I was just going to say, absolutely.
Mindy, here's a question. It says, I love the idea of the wellness score. That makes a lot of sense to me, but I don't understand how other aspects of the benefits bridge program help with this idea of the cliff. I'm a Section 8 landlord, and I see it over and over. The second a person starts making money, a tiny bit more money even, the ratio of the Section 8 subsidy changes drastically, and suddenly I'm having trouble collecting the rent. How do we as individuals advocate for a more logical transition for people who are really trying?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Because I think the benefit bridge, what it does that maybe another program doesn't do, it provides that safety net. So generally speaking, when you hit the cliff, you don't see the JFS anymore. You're done, you move on. The benefit bridge creates that safety net. So to your point, if a person is getting an increase in wages and about to lose their subsidy, they have this net in place to say, okay, Mindy, let's figure out how we're going to help you bridge that economic deficiency that you're going to encounter. And they help prepare them for it, as opposed to them taking the promotion or the raise, losing their benefits, and then being like, oh my goodness, what do I do? Or turning it down and not taking it. The benefit bridge program helps them be planful and to think long-term from a career standpoint, a financial standpoint, more of a holistic standpoint.
And from looking at this, Mindy, from a bigger picture here, I know this program is really just off and running, but we don't have any, or do you, county by county numbers? We don't really have those, or success rates, reentry rates, other data. That's a question from one of our listeners as well.
So we do. I don't have it up. I did the big numbers for you. I wasn't planning on getting it into the counties, but we do. We do have a county by county number. Like I said, we find that people who come in and leave the program are off benefits, stay off benefits, see a higher well-being score. Those who leave the program and aren't in a positive way, maybe negatively for whatever reason they quit, they don't see any increase in their well-being score, and the likelihood of them being back on benefits or staying on benefits increases substantially. But we do have it by county.
Jack, what's your take on the future of this? Are we going to see more and more people concerned about benefits cliffs? I mean, what are you, when it comes to hiring and talking to people that are coming in?
I think the answer is a rock solid yes, because I think that And again, my perspective has got a component of seeing the growth area, which is right now manufacturing in the United States. And you can see it's booming. One of the areas that we looked at during the pandemic, and we're talking about Lincoln Electrics, Morrison, we're talking about all the companies that are in Northeast Ohio. We said, okay, we've got this skills labor shortage. We don't have enough people. I mean, let's just get to the practical side of it. And we don't have the people. And so as a result, one of the groups that we looked at was the 3,000 people coming to Cuyahoga County every single year who were formerly incarcerated. Well, if we say, okay, we're going to pay them $12, $15 an hour because they're not skilled, we found immediately that was going to create a benefits cliff. So here we are trying to create a solution, only to find out that that solution needed to be adjusted immediately, and we did. We made sure we didn't create a benefits cliff for the new employees. So we started them at a higher salary right off the bat with no skills, but it became a learning experience for us. And then you look at what societal benefit was also inured as a result of this. So we went from a skilled labor shortage into this vast amount of workers that could join us on our team. In the first year, we placed over 350 individuals into manufacturing companies. Well, that's nice, but the real thing was we then flipped the social model of that 350. We had 0 days of recidivism.
Wow.
Let that sink in. And the reasoning why is because we looked at where's the benefit cliff? How do we make this person be a productive person? The Willy Wonka golden ticket is the job. And so it became this conversation that went way beyond just the benefits cliff. It became a positive, circuitous conversation that, and we had one guy that's been with us now 4 years. And he came in and said, hey, boss, I'm leaving. And I said, oh, why is that? He said, well, I got a better job offer. I said, that's fantastic. He said, wait a minute, you're happy? And I said, of course I'm happy. Why wouldn't I be happy that we haven't taken what was a problem, moved it along, made sure we got past the benefits cliff and got you into a salary, and now you got a better job. And oh, by the way, you're not going to leave, because whatever he was going to offer you, I'm going to offer you that same amount of money. And he's been with us now 4 years. So I think that this has the possibility, if Ohio would look at this and see what we've done up here around things like the sector partnership around second chance individuals, I think it is a more faceted answer than just the conversation about benefits cliffs. Can we do more? I hate the word social engineering, but the concept. But can we be more engaged in what we're doing with what's going on with the food bank, with what's going on with us, with what's going on in incarceration and things of that nature?
We're going to take listener questions in just a moment. Again, you can text your questions to 216-307-5632, or you can type them into the Q&A box if you're joining us on Zoom. We'll be able to answer those as well for you. John, if I could, I'd love to ask you about the long-term cost benefit, or the costs associated with benefits cliffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that is so sort of maddening that the cliff exists is that often when you look at a short-term analysis, right, let's say, and you can do this in our tools, right, that you want to go from working as a cashier to an LPN. You'll have to take, a year off of working full-time probably just to go to school to do that. Because of the cliff, you may not be significantly better off on the other side of that for a couple of years, right? And so the short-term impact sometimes is rather limited. But when you look at it over 10, 15, 20 years, it can be pretty substantial, right? We're talking, the increase associated wages from going from, let's say, a cashier to an LPN could be $750,000 over a 30-year career. And that's not only huge for the individual, but then you look at, how much that person's going to spend on sort of retail sales and income tax that they're going to have to pay, that it can have also pretty large benefit to sort of the government coffers, to say nothing about the fact that they're going to consume significantly less public assistance dollars, if at all, moving forward. And so, again, the issue, though, that one of the reasons I think there are so many sort of I think one of the things that's fascinating about this issue is that people come to it through so many ways, right? You have employers coming in from one way, and social service providers, and sort of good government people just sort of say, all right, well, if we can solve this on the long term, there is a huge financial payoff, workers benefit, employers benefit, if we can just figure out the policies to push this forward. This is, I think, one of the very sort of rare win-win-win sort of issue areas that exist. And so it can have, again, a pretty substantial individual financial impact, but also a tremendous fiscal positive impact for the communities in which we're able to address this successfully.
John, thank you. Jack, thank you. Mindy, thank you. Let's get to some questions now from our listeners, everyone who's been waiting patiently. One of the things I took from this, Mindy, we talked about it briefly, is that financial literacy program. Is there a specific literacy program that clients are referred to? That's one of our questions.
So at this point in time, there's not. We allow the counties, each county, to choose the financial literacy program that they would like to offer. We have one at the state that they can utilize. What we've learned in the benefit program is that a lot of them are working with banks, and the banks are then working directly with the client to help them. So one county, the bank will go through the individual's finances for the month and say, "Ooh, you went out to dinner 10 times. Is that really a good economic decision?" So we're letting each county decide, but a lot of them are choosing to work directly with banks who are then providing extra financial resources to the individual.
Here's a question, and either three of you can answer this here. When folks no longer qualify for Medicaid, if their employer does not offer health insurance, where are they going for insurance? Anyone want to take that one?
So,
It's generally I'm sorry.
okay, go ahead, John.
I would say I thought it was generally the marketplace, right? Sort of the final line, but the issue then becomes, right, does that create sort of an entirely new cliff? Because that, they've lost a benefit, and that's actually in our model, but that becomes very, very complicated very quickly. I'll just say that.
Yeah. And this, John, may be for you as well. What are some of the long-term impacts of the benefit cliffs, and how can they impact future eligibility for retirement programs like Social Security and Medicare? Good question.
I will say that the specifics of that are a bit beyond my area of expertise, other than to say that Social Security, for example, is partially based on lifetime earnings, right? And so if we can transition to somebody who is, not taking that salary increase or not taking on additional hours because of the fear of benefits cliff, you can imagine that over a lifetime, that could result in diminished benefits on Social Security. Whereas if they do take on those hours, they do take that promotion, they do have higher earnings, that they could potentially make more sort of in Social Security. So there is a potentially long-term career change. I mean, I think the other thing, and again, I think the Fed is, we've developed these tools. I think they are of tremendous benefit for individuals, but fundamentally, I think they also reflect our strengths in doing things revolving math, right? We have a lot of very smart people who sort of create calculators and these tools, but counseling is a huge component of all this, because even if you're coaching through someone and you say, well, if you take this wage increase, you're going to lose maybe a little bit of SNAP. You'll lose $50 in SNAP a month, but you're going to gain $100 in wages. So you'll actually be better off. That can still be a significant challenge, right? Because SNAP is something that's maybe been consistent in their life. They know they're going to get it. If I take this wage increase, what if I get laid off tomorrow, or I lose those hours and then I have to go back? So sort of negotiating a lot of the, softer side considerations is not just the hard numbers, is a really important consideration in all this, because people have sort of complex relationships with sort of the benefits they receive, right? That losing something feels really painful, even if you're going to be better off, and helping people sort of coach them through that, because it can be a very difficult decision. I think it's got to be a part of the solution.
Another question: in what ways do you see employers as a meaningful partner in helping to address or mitigate benefits cliffs? Jack?
Well, we became partners because of the necessity of workforce, and the group of I think we have 12 or 14 in the sector partnership with manufacturers, and it became a reality that that the pandemic drove it, and right now it's going to drive it more. I mean, like they just launched or announced a new launch of a new facility down there in Columbus, going to have over 4,000 employees in there. Where are they going to get those people? They're going to have to look at creative ways of getting those individuals out there. And John mentioned about some of the costs that some of these things will do. Well, by bumping up the salary to make sure we didn't have a benefits cliff issue, societal also benefited, because that individual, if they had a recidivism and ended up back, society's paying $75,000 a year to incarcerate. They are also not getting the $35,000 or $40,000 worth of taxes. So there's a delta on just that one individual because of a $2 or $3 or $4 increase around the benefits cliff is saving society $125,000 per individual. And just out of those 350 people that I was talking about, the society actually saved money. It's not going to show up on the benefits cliff. They're not going to show up. We need to be looking at the complete ledger, like the way a business would look at it, and say, wait a minute, society just benefited over $3 million of those 350 individuals. Just that little bit because of a few extra dollars to get around the problem with the benefits cliff.
Mindy, there's something I wanted to follow up with, something you had said earlier that I thought was so important. And you mentioned, when talking to different groups of people about the needs, you mentioned shame, and that just stuck with me, because there are so many people, I'm sure, that get so excited about getting ahead a little bit. And then once you do, and maybe they don't know about this cliff, they're back in, even a worse situation than they may already be in. Tell me more about your dialogue with some of the people.
Yeah, a lot of them said they were in crisis. So when they go to their JFS, it's kind of like you're at rock bottom. And when they walked into the JFS, there was no compassion from our workers. And they just felt shame in having to get benefits or continue their benefits. And that really the compassion and saying, okay, how else can I help you? What else do you need? Would go a long way, instead of just saying, okay, you want SNAP, move on.
Yeah.
We are really working in the state of Ohio to get to a place where, we are asking those questions. So, and we know that if you're food insecure, that's probably not the only thing going on in your life at that time. You probably are having housing issues. You're probably having childcare issues, and you're not going to show up to work every day if you don't have food and you don't have a place to live. So really looking at the individual holistically is key to long-term success and long-term economic success.
I'll just add, I think I've worked with a sort of broad array of stakeholders. There are a lot of great employers that are really interested in this work and interested in addressing it and learning more about it. There are some that either don't know it about it enough as you would think, and that impacts actually how I think they respond to their employees, telling them, like, I'm not going to take on this extra shift because of benefits cliff. Because I've worked with workers who say, when I tell that to my boss, they don't believe me, right? They think I'm sort of lazy, or I don't want to work, because they sort of say, how could we possibly have a system that discourages this? And that is one, I think, sort of goal of our tool, is to, again, publicize this as a very real phenomenon that, again, depending on the industry, can impact a pretty substantial amount of workers.
Here's a question coming in as well tonight or today. Should businesses be promoting work incentive planning or benefits analysis for individuals receiving certain types of public benefits? What are the limits for employer involvement?
So I'll speak from a state perspective. Employers cannot ask an individual whether or not they are on any type of benefits, which I think is the gap, right? So if you're an employer and you don't know if your employee is on benefits, you don't know how to help them. But that's from the state perspective and federal law. But Jack, you can talk to more about how, from a business, you would handle that.
Well, we obviously we avoid walking over that thin line, but you also cannot stop wanting to care for some individuals. So it will generally come up from their side of the aisle as opposed to us bringing it up. We're not going to bring it up. Just like the intern that wanted we wanted to give them more, and the intern said, I can't take more, as far as this point. So I really think that we need, as government and business, we need to get better organized to actually give a better response to this, because it's silly not to say, okay, wait a minute, you want to grow, we want to increase your responsibility, we want to pay you more, and you're telling me that societal has a constraint on that. Let's get us all together and have a conversation about what makes the most sense at the government level, the state level, at the federal level, and at the employer level.
It can be
Another question coming,
I was
please,
gonna
John.
say, it can be a huge obstacle. I think, we actually originally developed an employer tool and haven't really been able to get as much traction, I think, as we initially hoped to, just because some employers don't want to have that conversation, legally for very good reasons. Some employees don't want to have that conversation with their boss. And so even when you have a really invested employer who really is interested in doing that, you then have to find sort of almost a third party to sort of as an intermediary that both people feel safe with, which just makes it very complex.
And we actually did use Magnet. Magnet was the intermediary that helped us with the sale, with the payroll, the numbers, to make sure that we were trying our best when we put the sector partnership together to actually draw a line and say, this is going to be the minimum salary we're going to pay to bring these individuals and give them a second chance.
And Mindy, is there a preemptive state role here in this? I mean, you mentioned the big gap is just, obviously, you can't talk about it. You can't, the employers cannot go and ask.
So we've tried a reverse benefit bridge program where we try to incentivize employers to provide incentives, like the state would give them money to provide incentives to employees. It is, and to John's point, it was really hard to implement. I think we had one employer actually get far enough along in it, but it's just getting the employees to trust the system and trust the employer is really a huge gap. And it's just, it never really took off.
Yeah. Is there anything that governments or employees can do to address the childcare cliffs? Really, that's a big one.
Yeah. So that is so we don't oversee childcare here at JFS, but that is a huge gap in our system. And I think the legislature recognizes it, the governor recognizes it, DCY, which is the department that oversees it, recognizes it. It's just very costly. So trying to budget it and make sure that people are getting the resources it needs is a real balancing act, and they are working on it the best that they can. But it is not as easy as one would think.
Child care has, at least the federal assistance, it's not nearly as it's very overprescribed, so it doesn't reach nearly as many people, something like SNAP or TANF, but it arguably has the most severe cliff. It drops off very dramatically, and because of how valuable it is, kind of a huge negative impact. One interesting, I think it's only in a pilot stage at this point, and it's a relatively small pilot, but and your neighbor down in Kentucky has a new program where employers can basically give money to the state for childcare. The state then turns around and pays the employer's childcare provider directly to offset their childcare cost. And because the money never hits the employee, it doesn't trigger a cliff, which is kind of ingenious. And you don't necessarily have to add, everybody's paying, or if people have kids, you can generally get a sense of if they're paying for childcare. So it skirts around some of the sort of areas of sensitivity, because I mean, even so, like I will sort of add, I have 2 young kids. I'm more than happy to tell my employer I would need any assistance anything they come up with to help me offset my childcare costs would be greatly appreciated. So again, that's a very small program, but I think it's an interesting design and gets at some of these areas. Because I think another thing, and again, childcare is one of the areas where it's most pronounced, is because the eligibility criteria for the childcare program is actually pretty high, that this is not just an issue that hits extremely low income individuals. Depending on the state and which program you're talking about, there are people who are making, I think what we would otherwise think of as pretty high salaries that can hit the cliff as well, which again goes to that 37% number that I cited earlier.
We have discussed a lot in this near hour-long conversation so far. I want to get a final takeaway from each of you. Mindy, we'll start with you. What's your final takeaway from our conversation today?
I think everything in this world is not, there's no one silver bullet. So I think it takes a collaboration between government, businesses, and community resources to really help individuals and raise them up so that they can meet the long-term self-sufficiency. I think Jack said it. It is beneficial to everybody. Nobody loses in this if you can get individuals up and long-term self-sufficient. The state will have a return on investment. Workers get workers that are able to work more hours and take promotions. So really the key to this issue, I think, is the blending of resources, the blending of funding, and working collaboratively.
Jack?
I just think that my fellow employers should not see this as a distraction from their work. Just like the comment I think made about the people are embarrassed to come forward. Well, the manufacturers, in hospitality, although they need to get engaged because this is the workforce of tomorrow. We need to figure out how we're going to get engaged. And so you just can't sit on the fence and say, hey, we don't have the people. Part of the reason is because we haven't figured out a solution for this exact problem. There's people sitting all around us here who are not coming out to the workforce because of this exact issue.
Good point. John, final takeaway.
Just a variation, I think, on what Mindy said in the sense of it's going to take a lot of collaboration, not only between sort of like government and employers, but also various government actors. I think I am relatively new to this space. I think one thing that I greatly underappreciate is that, you know, the people that are in the SNAP often have sort of blinders and they're just focused on their program, and someone doing housing is just focused on Section 8. And that's not how, again, to sort of the human-centered design element that Mindy highlighted earlier, that's not how people experience these, right? And that's not why the problem necessarily exists. It's often because of this combination. And sort of secondly about collaboration is that I think there's probably going to be elements of something like the Benefits Bridge program that could, again, be helpful to other states. And there's other states doing things that I think could be helpful to Ohio. And so I think continuing to have these sort of discussions and highlight best practices, because there genuinely is, I think, a lot of momentum and trying to come up with creative ways to address this nationally.
John Rees, Senior Policy Advisor on the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta's Community and Economic Development Team. Mindy Kowalski, and Assistant Director of Health and Human Services with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. And Jack Schron Jr., President and CEO of Jergens Inc. Thank you so much. We're coming to an end. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you to everyone that's watching and listening and sending in those questions. Very thoughtful questions. And we got some really good answers today. Fantastic conversation. On behalf of Ideastream Public Media, we appreciate the invitation to be part of this important conversation today. I will now turn this back over to Sharon to close out the program.
Thank you, Josh, for moderating today's discussion, and to John, Mindy, and Jack for an engaging and informative conversation on the impact of the benefits cliffs on our community. Thank you to Ideastream Public Media and WOVU 95.9 FM, who live streamed today's conversation. And thank you for joining us today and lending your voices on this important topic. Information on our next panel discussions will be available on United Way's website at unitedwaycleveland.org. All community conversation events are complimentary and open to the public. Remember, if you need assistance and do not know where to turn, please call us at 211. Thank you for being with us today and have a good afternoon.